Hi, I'm Ryan.
And I'm Dillon.
And we're going to give you our top 5 books that we read in 2023.
Yeah, so not new releases from the year, just of all the books we read before the new year. Happy New Year, by the way. These are our top 5, and I don't know about you, I feel like I had a great reading year.
Yeah, I feel similarly. I liked a lot of the books I read, yeah.
So for me, it was hard to choose just the top 5. I feel like I'm leaving out some great ones. Mm-hmm. So stick around to the end. We'll do at least one honorable mention.
Yeah.
But what's your number 5?
I'll kick it off. My number 5 is The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay. I had not read anything by Paul Tremblay. Mm-hmm. And this one was a real thriller of a horror novel, and potentially it's going to lead me to read some more things from Paul Tremblay, I think.
Mm-hmm. My number 5 is by John Steinbeck, a book called The Moon is Down. This is one of his short novels that he wrote during World War II, and it's kind of a historical fiction about a small town. It doesn't say where, but we can assume it's in Europe. A small town gets taken over by some Nazi soldiers. Somebody in the town is a traitor, and he lets them in, and so the town is occupied. They take over the mayor's house, and then it's this kind of push and pull of them trying to control all the people in the town and use their resources, but then people rebelling or just refusing to do what they say. And it's an interesting short novel that's pretty open-ended, which is interesting to think about it being written during World War II, and nobody knew how the war was going to end. Right. So that was a great read by John Steinbeck.
All right, my number 4 is The Prestige by Christopher Priest. Both of my 5 and 4 from our show that we do, Adaptation Station, that have movie adaptations. People may be familiar with The Prestige movie by Christopher Nolan.
Yeah.
A double Christopher, I'm just realizing. Christopher Priest wrote it. Christopher Nolan directed the movie.
I didn't think about that.
But this is it's kind of, I think it's described as a fantasy novel, but it's like a historical fantasy, kind of two feuding magicians.
Reads more like historical fiction.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some fantasy in there. Interesting. Yeah, our Prestige episode is already out. You can go watch that. The other one, as you said, we're getting ready to film the next one.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for Cabin at the End of the World. My number 4 is a book called Demian, or Damien, by Hermann Hesse, the German writer who is famous for writing Siddhartha. This is a kind of similar book by him that's kind of a coming of age about a young boy who kind of becomes rebellious, and the main character is not Damian. The main character is named Sinclair, but Damian's like this other older boy he meets in school that becomes a big influence on him. And it follows him from when he's a really young kid to his young adult life, through typical kind of coming-of-age stuff. Like if you liked Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, or maybe Catcher in the Rye, I would say this is a similar novel. Okay. Another short one, also.
My number 3 is The Passenger by Cormac McCarthy. This was one of the 2 books he wrote in 2020, or published in 2022, before he recently passed away in the middle of 2023. And this one is, I don't know, I'd like to call it like an exploration of like the meaning of life and the universe. And it has a lot of touches on a lot of technical subjects, even mathematics and physics, that kind of stuff, through the tale of a man his ongoing processing of his like sister's death and everything. So
yeah, sounds heavy for one of his last books. I'd like to check that one out. My number 3 is a book that was recommended to me called When Breath Becomes Air by Paul Kalanithi. This one is nonfiction. It's kind of a memoir written by a doctor, a medical doctor, who gets diagnosed with terminal cancer. and he actually passed away while writing the book. But he finishes it. It's kind of, comes to an abrupt ending, and then his wife, his widow, writes a little afterword after it ends. But it's super well written too, because he studied literature first, and then he was interested in philosophy, like the philosophy of life and death, and this convinced him to change his career to medicine. And so it's like a very valuable book to read about mortality, because he was facing his own, but then he writes super well because he was into literature, and then he knows the science of the disease he had. So it was just a really great read that I couldn't put down. Thank you, Will, for the recommendation.
All right. My number 2 is Diary by Chuck Palahniuk. This one is the only reread on my list. And it's my favorite Chuck Palahniuk that I've read so far. It's like Chuck Palahniuk is, just this kind of weird and surreal, like existential type of book about an artist kind of embroiled in this weird conspiracy on this island.
I still want to read that one because I've heard you talk about it before, and written like it's his diary, like you're reading his diary.
It's her diary.
Her diary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sounds interesting. My number 2 was actually a new release in 2023, a book called Where There Was Fire by John Manuel Arias. This one is the debut novel from this writer from Costa Rica, and it's kind of a historical fiction about a fire that happens at a banana plantation in 1968. But then it's also this family drama. It kind of goes forward and back in time from really 5 generations of this one family that's affected by that one night. And it's historical fiction, but it also has some magical realism elements. Kind of like Prestige, I guess we could say, because that one seems historical, but then there's some fantasy stuff in there. But I just loved it. I love the way it unfolds. It keeps flashing back to that one night to reveal a little bit more about how it affected the family, and that was just one of my new favorite books.
And my number 1 book that I read in 2023 is Stella Maris by Cormac McCarthy. This is the other one, the second of the 2 books that were published in 2022. It's the companion to The Passenger, companion novel, and it is really like an amazing like ending edition, like almost in a way like a summary of all the ideas that could have been in the first one, told it's exclusively a conversation between the main character from The Passenger, his sister, and her therapist.
The whole time?
The whole thing is a dialogue. It's one conversation. Oh, wow. It's multiple different, times, but it's all just a dialogue of them talking.
And it's supposed to be read in that order?
Yes.
Passenger, Stella Maris. Okay.
I would say so. Otherwise, you'd be pretty lost in the second one. The second one really relies on you knowing what happens.
Okay. Good to know.
The Passenger.
I need to read those ones. And you only had one reread in your list, right?
Yeah.
Diary. My number 1 was a reread for me. One of my favorite books that is a play, The Tragedy of King Lear by William Shakespeare. This one also has, lots of adaptations like Shakespeare does, but stay tuned. We may be making an episode of this one in the future. King Lear is my favorite play by Shakespeare and just one of my favorite books. It's not one of his comedies, so beware. Read it if you like tragedies, but it's got a lot of great family drama about loyalty, authenticity. How do you know when someone's being honest or they're betraying you? There's politics and war to it. I was really hooked in from the opening scene where King Lear's splitting up his kingdom between his 3 daughters, and they have to say how much they love him to get lots of land, and the youngest daughter, Cordelia, refuses to play this game, that really sets off the whole drama, and Cordelia is one of my favorite characters in anything. So that's my number one read of 2023.
Nice.
Yeah. Now we can give some honorable mentions. Just one more great book. What was your number 6?
Yeah, my honorable mention wasn't on my official list, so it didn't count when I said what I said before, is a reread. My number 6 is A Case of Need by Michael Crichton. And writing as Jeffrey Hudson. It's an early novel of his, I think 1968. Wow. It's a medical mystery novel, kind of almost like a detective, novel too. But with some of, if you read any Michael Crichton, you'll recognize the style where it's a nice thriller. It's got some medical technical facts thrown in there. Still early, but still one of my favorite ones. Michael Crichton's a favorite of mine. And stay tuned again for that one.
Yeah.
That one's coming up in our season 3 of Adaptation Station.
Yeah, you can tell we did a lot of reading in preparation for the new season, and we're excited to start releasing those episodes pretty soon. And actually my number 6 that almost made my top 5 was also a reread for me. It's a book called Where the Wild Things Are by Maurice Sendak. If you haven't read this book, it's an awesome kids book, and if you're not a kid now, it's still a good read as an adult, because somebody donated the book to my school this year. So I was going through a box of donated books, and I saw that cover. I had some nostalgia for it, so I decided to reread it. It's a short, easy read, but the artwork is wonderful. It's really interesting, and the story is also really unique as a kid's book, I would say. It doesn't have like an obvious lesson like a lot of kids' books do. I'm sure there is a moral there. It's like Max is acting crazy, and then his mom sends him to his room, but then he just, in his mind, goes on an adventure, and there's these big monsters there, and at first it's a lot of fun, but then they want to eat him, and they don't want him to leave. So it's like, what's really the moral of the story? It's like, it's kind of about your inner demons, maybe. If you spend too much time with your own craziness, it can turn dark, even when it seems fun at first.
Yeah, so those are our top books that we read in 2023. Let us know what your top books were. We could use some recommendations, even though our reading queues are as long as they are. We always would like some recommendations.
Yeah, I always bump recommendations high on my reading list, because I know, somebody says it's a great book, so I should read that one before some other ones. So yeah, comment below, what's your favorite book you read in 2023? If you're looking for anything new to read, we have some books available. You can find those down in the description. Order yourself some copies of those while you wait for Adaptation Station Season 3 coming out soon. So don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss those episodes. Like this video, tell your friends to tune in too, and you can click another video now. Thank you. Bye.